Every deep space expedition used to begin with speeches. Explorers stood beneath flags, while politicians spoke about destiny, courage, and the ancient human need to discover what waited beyond the horizon. Then the ships launched into the dark, and sometimes they never came back. The Artemis sent 6 seconds of static, followed by the sound of a child crying. Then nothing. Earth did not create the Pathfinders because humanity was brave. It created them because bravery had become too expensive. The Dauntless vanished beyond Tau Ceti after reporting something moving beneath the ice of an uncharted moon. The colony ship, New Promise, reached its destination, transmitted that landing had begun, then fell silent. In those early years, humanity's ships carried none of the stealth, sensors, or warning systems that came later. They announced themselves the moment they arrived, broadcasting openly to anyone listening. And some of what was listening had no interest in talking. More than one lost ship's final transmission was not static or silence, but the sound of something else's weapons fire. Most famous of all was the Horizon. 209 colonists, 23 of them children, who reached a habitable world after 26 years in transit and transmitted one message. Habitable planet confirmed. Local vessels approaching. Beginning first contact procedures. Then nothing. Earth called back twice a year. The messages continued long after everyone who had known the crew personally was gone. There was never an answer. Humanity's first century among the stars was not an age of glorious exploration. It was an age of funerals. Grief did not care about the color of a person's skin, the god they prayed to, or who they loved. On the memorial wall, every name mattered. By 2248, the United Earth Assembly had begun quietly canceling deep space missions. Officially, the delays were temporary. Unofficially, humanity had run out of volunteers it was willing to bury, and the planet-wide outcry had become unbearable. The meeting that changed everything took place beneath the mountains of Norway, in a bunker built to survive an orbital strike. No flags, no journalists, just a circular table, 17 exhausted officials, and a hologram listing 487 names, the dead of the previous 18 months. General Amara Vance had commanded the United Earth Expeditionary Forces for 11 years. She had spent most of them writing letters to families. The finance minister enlarged the image of Earth's newest exploration vessel, the Magellan. A kilometer long, 300 crew, laboratories, farms, medical bays. 74 billion credits to build, he said. 9 billion to launch. If we lose one ship, we lose the equivalent of 12 planetary hospitals. So what are you suggesting? Vance asked. That we stop. Suspend crewed exploration for 50 years. Perhaps a century. Someone laughed. It was not a happy sound. A century was a polite way of saying, never again. At the far end of the table, Colonel Elias Ward had said nothing for nearly 3 hours. He spent his career designing war games for small teams. Soldiers cut off from support, surrounded by people who didn't think or fight like they did. He erased the Magellan from the display. In its place, a black capsule, 4 meters long, 1 suspension chamber, 1 compact hyperdrive, 1 occupant. That is not an exploration vessel, the minister said. No, Ward said. It's a solution. We keep thinking like sailors. Every ship we send is a village. Hundreds of people, thousands of points of failure. What if we stop sending villages? The finance minister pointed at the capsule. Why not send a probe? Ward filled the display with records of unmanned fold trials, probes that vanished, one that returned years late with half its memory erased, another fused through an asteroid. "Machines can follow a mapped fold," he said. "They can't create one through unknown space. Outside charted routes, the geometry shifts mid-transit. An AI can calculate the possible exits, but it can't always tell which one still belongs to reality. The drive needs a conscious navigator making judgment calls no equation can verify in time. So the hyperdrive needs a human mind. Only past the charted lanes. The AI does the mathematics. The Pathfinder decides when the mathematics is lying. Once someone survives the route, probes, carriers, and fleets can follow it safely." Ward enlarged the pod again. "Every Pathfinder is paired with a watch squadron. The Pathfinder creates the route beyond the charted lanes, one safe fold at a time. The squadron follows only across geometry already survived. Always one verified jump behind. 1 light year from the target, the ships stop, far beyond the crowded inner gravity wells and normal detection. The Pathfinder crosses the final distance alone, reads the system, and transmits a safe corridor. Find nothing, they withdraw. Call for help. Earth is already close enough to answer. You want to send 1 soldier into unexplored space? 1 volunteer, carrying the finest survival technology Earth can build, and trained as a diplomat and first contact specialist, not just a soldier. Observe, survive. Make contact if the world demands it. Report. If a world is safe, we follow with everyone else. If it isn't, we've lost 1 person instead of 300. You make that life sound expendable." "I'm saying the opposite," Ward said. "A failed expedition costs hundreds of lives. This reduces the risk to 1, and gives that 1 person everything we have." He nodded towards the wall. "Half of those names weren't lost to ice or a bad landing. Something met them first, and they never saw it coming, because they arrived broadcasting their position to the whole system. A pod is small and quiet. It can find out what's waiting before we risk anyone else." He looked at the wall of names. "We're not deciding 1 life matters less. We're deciding that hundreds shouldn't vanish every time we ask a question." "What will be the designation?" Ward looked at the black capsule suspended above the table. "Pathfinders." Building the pod was the easy part. Finding someone who could survive inside it was not. The military selected 80 elite candidates: commandos, test pilots, survival specialists, people who had crossed deserts without water and kept fighting while wounded. Each entered an isolation simulator, simulating the pod in deep space. Each woke to red emergency lights and a calm voice explaining that they were alone, months from anywhere, with no functioning communications. The test was meant to last 72 hours. The first candidate began speaking to a mission control he'd been told did not exist. By hour 11, he was begging the computer for another human voice. By hour 14, he was tearing at the hatch. The second lasted 17 hours. The third curled beneath the console and stopped responding. The fourth attacked the pod's computer because it sounded human, but would not behave like one. Of 80 elite soldiers, 2 never recovered their minds, 3 completed the test. None agreed to repeat it. Ward watched every recording. These were not weak people. They were among the strongest Earth could produce. That was the problem. Every one of them had been trained to survive hardship together. A soldier alone was a soldier deprived of their greatest weapon: other people. After 2 more candidates needed long-term psychiatric care, the Assembly suspended the trials and ordered an independent review. That was how Dr. Mara Okonkwo entered the bunker. She had spent 20 years studying isolation and the survival behavior of children raised in Earth's neglected districts. She wasn't there to find recruits. She was there to find out whether the role itself was impossible, or whether the military had simply been recruiting the wrong people. For 9 days, she reviewed the recordings, the scans, the interviews. Then she asked for their childhood records. On the 10th day, she entered General Vance's office, carrying a stack of reports. "Your candidates are not failing because they are weak," she said. Vance looked up. "We know that." "No, you know they are strong. That is not the same as understanding why they fail." Okonkwo placed the reports on the desk. Every candidate came from a structure, a command, a squad, a rescue protocol. Their sense of who they were was built around belonging to something larger than themselves. Colonel Ward leaned forward. "The Pathfinder will have an AI. An intelligence is not a community. When your candidates wake and believe the community is gone, they don't experience ordinary loneliness. They experience the collapse of the structure that taught them how to survive." "Are you saying nobody can do this?" Vance asked. "I am saying you were looking in the wrong place." Okonkwo opened another file. The photograph showed a girl of 12 staring into the camera as though she expected it to become dangerous. Sanaa Vale, a young Nigerian born in Lagos Sector 12. Mother missing since she was 6. No father recorded. She escaped a compromised shelter at 8 and survived 3 years on the streets of Lagos, trading water for meals, learning which alleys belonged to which crews. At 11, she led 7 younger children through a chemical fire while gangs fought over the evacuation routes. Vance's expression hardened. "She is a child." "Yes, which means she is not a candidate." "Then why are you showing us her file?" "Because your program searches for adults who can function when rescue is uncertain and no voice answers. Earth already has people who were forced to learn that. We just never gave most of them the safety or the education to choose what to do with it." Ward closed the file. "We are not turning abandoned children into soldiers." Okonkwo met his eyes. "If that is what you heard, this program should be terminated today." Neither officer answered. "Find these children. That's already our responsibility. Give them homes, education, years of stability. Let them become whatever they choose." "And the Pathfinders?" Vance asked. "When they're adults, some may choose to apply. Most won't. Refusal costs them nothing. No obligation is ever attached to rescue, and no child is ever selected for Pathfinder training." Okonkwo rested one hand on Sanaa's file. Ward looked through the glass at the empty simulator. "And you believe someone like her could survive it?" Okonkwo looked at the photograph. "She already has." There was no combat training waiting for the children who came through the academy's doors. Just food first, clean rooms, doctors, teachers who came back every morning, doors that locked from the inside. No contracts, no obligations, just an offer, repeated patiently to children who had every reason not to trust it. Most eventually left, and the academy counted every one of them a success. Doctors, engineers, colony planners. Some stayed. Sanaa arrived at 13 with a sharpened piece of metal hidden in her sleeve. For months, she slept on the floor beside the door, though her room had a bed. She hid bread in the ventilation shafts because nothing in her life had ever been available every day. It took nearly a year for her to stop. She studied engineering because broken machines had once decided whether she drank. She studied languages because every street had its own rules. She studied negotiation, reading intent from a stranger, offering something before asking for it, backing away from a threat without looking like prey. The instructors called it diplomacy. Sanaa recognized it as the oldest skill she owned. and she studied fear. Not how to eliminate it, but how to use it. At 18, after completing her education, Sanaa applied voluntarily to the Pathfinder program. Only then did combat, first contact, and operational training begin. Her instructors would later admit, half in admiration and half in dread, that if she ever turned against them, even they would struggle to stop her. At 19, she entered the isolation chamber for the first time. Before it sealed, she asked 3 questions. How much water do I have? Can I repair life support from inside? And what happens if the computer lies to me? The technician assured her it wouldn't. She gave him a look that made him reconsider the wisdom of the answer. She woke under red emergency lights. Communications failed. No rescue possible. She checked the air, the water, the power, the hatch, then opened the control panel and began, calmly, to work. At hour 16, the ship's intelligence spoke for the first time. You have not requested contact. You are not human. Why should that matter? It doesn't until you ask silly questions. At hour 21, it asked whether she was afraid. Yes. Then why are you not panicking? Fear is information, she said. Panic is what happens when you don't know what to do with it. She completed 72 hours, then asked for another week, then a month. When the chamber finally opened, Ward was waiting. It adapted to you, he said, changed its language, anticipated your routines. The AI needs a name. Sanaa looked at the softly pulsing interface. Asta. Why? Stars are easier to trust when they have names. 7 years passed between Ward's proposal and the first Pathfinder launch. In that time, Earth built the Academy, perfected the pod, and organized 3 Pathfinder Watch squadrons, compact groups of warships, medical vessels, and recovery craft, built to wait beyond a target system, while a single Pathfinder went ahead. Sanaa Vale became Pathfinder 1. Asta became the intelligence bound to her. Navigation and sensors inside the pod, folded into her biosuit whenever she left it, ready to seal a wound, mask a heat signature, or turn scrap into a tool. In the final year of training, Sanaa received a dedicated neural link. Her own channel, not the suit's, letting Asta's voice arrive as thought instead of sound, whenever silence mattered more than clarity. None of it was unlimited. It gave her options, never her decisions. Every pod also carried one instruction it could obey without her. If both Pathfinder and active intelligence lost control of the craft, the drive core, root archive, and dormant AI backup would destroy themselves beyond recovery. A conscious Pathfinder, or active AI, could delay the failsafe while retrieval remained possible. Whatever Earth lost out there, no one would ever be handed the means to follow it home. Her first assignment came off the memorial wall. The horizon, now silent for 75 years. The carrier Threshold carried Sanaa to the final charted lane. Beyond that point, she and Asta navigated the otherwise uncrewed vessel through unknown space. After each successful fold, Threshold transmitted the verified geometry behind it. The Watch Squadron followed one proven segment at a time, always a full jump behind, never entering a fold Sanaa had not already survived. Colonel Ward walked her to the lunar loading bay and up the ramp of the carrier itself. You can still withdraw. I know. If the system is hostile, observe and withdraw. You do not begin a war alone. Understood. And if you find survivors? Ward glanced at the memorial data core mounted beside the airlock. Tell us where they are. Sanaa stepped through. Behind her, Ward watched the hatch seal on an otherwise empty ship. No crew, one suspension berth, and only Sanaa and Asta to guide it beyond the final charted lane. Asta's voice filled the small space. "Hyperdrive ready." "Nervous?" Sanaa asked. "I do not experience nervousness. I experience professional caution." 11 weeks later, after Threshold had led the Watch Squadron across the final proven segment, it woke her at the 1 light-year holding point. She climbed out of the berth and into the sealed pod fitted into the carrier's belly. The last piece of her equipment, and the only one built to enter the target system alone. The carrier released it. For a moment the pod hung there, small and black against the distant star. Then Sanaa and Asta began the 9-month work of turning the final unknown light year into a route, while the Watch Squadron cut every active emission and waited. The final crossing was not the quiet approach Sanaa had trained for. Between the 7th and 8th folds, Asta woke her in the middle of her sleep cycle. Something was out there. No lights, no signal. Moving in a way nothing friendly moves. For 6 hours, it felt as though neither of them breathed. Engines cold, every system dark. It passed close enough that Asta could make out its shape, but never what it wanted. It did not turn towards them. Asta did not say much afterward. Sanaa did not need it explained. She understood without being told why the last words from the Dauntless and the Artemis had never sounded like an accident. Those old ships had lit up the second they arrived, announcing themselves to anyone listening. This thing had announced nothing. Whether it belonged to the Ver or to something else, the lesson was the same. Silence did not mean empty space. She didn't sleep well again for a long time. When Sanaa emerged inside the target system, the plan was simple. 3 quiet days in orbit, learning the patterns before setting foot on the ground. Every Pathfinder was taught the same rule. Never walk into a place you had not read first. Before descending, the pod released a grain-sized hyperwave relay into a high polar orbit. It was nearly invisible, independently powered, and capable of sending Asta's findings back to human space, even if the pod never left the planet. Later generations would replace it with quantum cell communication. For Sanaa, it was the fastest voice humanity possessed. Sanaa got less than 3 hours. The moment her pod reached high orbit, warning lights went off within the pod. In the 76 years since the horizon arrived, the civilization below had built a defense grid far more sensitive than anything the old colony ship had encountered. The new network detected even the pod's suppressed fold signature. "Multiple contacts," Asta said. "They are not asking questions first." Interceptors closed from 3 directions. In the seconds she had left, Asta ran one final sweep. Biosignatures detected. Human. Scattered across 3 continents, concentrated in at least 17 population centers. Estimate in the tens of thousands, minimum. Sanaa filed it the way she filed everything now. Not relief. Not yet. Just data. The first confirmation that whatever waited for her on the ground, it would not be ghosts. "Transfer your full active state to the suit," she ordered. The pod's displays dimmed as Asta compressed itself into the suit. "Transfer complete. Pod operating on autonomous combat routines." Sanaa fought the pod through the first wave and lost the second. A strike clipped the drive housing, and the pod went from falling gracefully to simply falling. "Impact in 11 seconds, Asta said. "Brace protocol engaging." She didn't have time to answer. The suit stiffened around her spine and skull before she'd even thought to ask it to. Nanites flooding her joints, the fibers across her chest hardening into something closer to armor than cloth. The world became noise, then heat, then nothing. She woke in the wreckage with Ver soldiers already closing around her, the suit still rigid across her ribs, the only reason she was breathing at all. Aster assessed the crushed pod through the suit's remaining link. The drive housing was split open. The defense grid was converging. The craft could neither escape nor protect its core. "Capture is unavoidable," Aster said. "Core denial conditions confirmed." Sanaa tasted blood. "Do it." 90 seconds later, before the Ver reached the wreckage, the drive core, root archive, and dormant Aster backup reduced themselves to slag. The active Aster remained inside Sanaa's suit. The failsafe existed so that whatever Earth lost out there, no one would ever be handed the means to follow it home. They could not strip the suit either. It had hardened around her on impact. A survival response rather than a lock, but functionally the same thing. And every tool they tried against it failed to find a seam. That failure, and the ruin where her ship used to be, was what got her marched into the capital, instead of finished off where she'd landed. The Great Hall had been built to make people feel small. Its roof opened into a vast oculus directly above the throne, so the sky itself hung as part of the architecture. Proof, to anyone standing below, of how far their reach extended. Sanaa was walked its full length in restraints, past banners taken from 100 conquered worlds, to a throne set beneath the severed command module of the horizon, suspended in the open air of the oculus by cables thick as a man's arm. The rest of the ship stood outside in the Capitol Plaza, mounted upright as a monument to conquest. Their officers and court officials lined both sides of the hall, drawn in by word that the wreck from the sky had a survivor. The kind of spectacle a conquering species turns into an audience. Along the walls, behind the officers, stood human servants in rows, eyes down. The posture of people taught for 4 generations that looking up cost something. Near the doorway, a boy no older than 8 had stopped scrubbing the floor entirely, the brush still in his hand. His eyes had already found the small star stitched into the shoulder of her suit. The same shape his grandmother traced with one finger every night before he slept, from a story so old nobody remembered where it started. A star that remembers what it lost. A star that comes back. An old woman near the base of the throne, marked like every other servant there, lifted her head at the sound of Sanaa's voice, found the star, and did not look away again. The Supreme Leader did not rise. He studied his prisoner the way a collector studies something unexpectedly still moving. "Process the wreckage. Full teardown, once the crowds have seen it." A soldier bowed and hurried out. Only then did the Supreme Leader look at her properly. "You crossed an impossible distance," he said, "to die on your knees in my hall." Sanaa did not kneel. Fear is information, she reminded herself. The oldest rule she had taught Aster during the isolation trial. She let it settle, filed it, until what was left was room enough to think. "I don't kneel well," she said. "You'll have to make do." Something shifted in the Supreme Leader's expression. Not anger. Interest. "Your vessel destroyed itself the moment it struck ground," he said. "My engineers tell me there was nothing left to salvage. Not a filament." "Good. And the armor you wear cannot be removed." "Also good. You understand what that tells me. Your people build machines that would rather die than teach us anything." "My people build machines that keep promises," Sanaa said. "That one promised it wouldn't help you. It kept its word." The Supreme Leader descended one step from the throne. Why now? More than 3 generations of silence, and Earth sends one broken soldier out of the sky. Coincidence offends me. It's not a coincidence. It's a search. You've had more than 3 generations to build an empire out of people who used to sing our songs. We've spent those same generations building the ship that could finally come looking. One ship. One person. I'm not the war supreme leader. I'm the part that checks whether there needs to be one. He studied her for a long moment. And what has this check concluded? That I need you to release every descendant of the horizon still living on this world. The hall laughed all at once, the way a room does when it's quietly agreed something is safely absurd. A soldier, restrained, giving orders to an empire. Asta's voice arrived straight into her thoughts. No sound, nothing for a guard to catch. For the record, I would put reasonable odds on this working. Encouraging, she replied through the neural channel, without moving her lips. The restraints touching her suit gave Asta a route into the palace infrastructure. Its nanites moved carefully. Security network, labor registry, then the central collar system. 86,412 registered humans, Asta reported through the neural channel. 17 population centers, 43 labor classifications. Legal status, property. Sanaa kept her face still. Along the wall, the old woman did not laugh. Neither did the boy, nor the servants near them, who had stopped pretending to study the floor. None of them had ever seen a human speak like that. Not to a Vare, not standing straight, a woman alone and unarmed, telling the most powerful person on the planet what was about to happen. The Supreme Leader let the laughter finish before he answered. You ask for 86,000 lives as though the number embarrasses me. It doesn't. Your original colonists brought a frozen embryonic archive. We turned it into artificial gestation lines and manufactured workers faster than their families could have produced them. 86,000 lives are a rounding error against what this empire has built with hands like theirs. We are human, Sanaa said, once the hall was quiet enough to hear her. We do not leave our people behind. It does not matter how long it takes. We find a way. We are coming for them, and this is your last warning, because the others are already behind me. If there is one thing my world has learned across every century it took to become what it is now, it is to hate slavery in every shape it wears. The Supreme Leader rose fully from the throne. You will watch what we did to those who came before you, he said, and then you will understand what we do to anyone foolish enough to follow. Where is your Earth now? He was still smiling when the sky above the great hall began to darken. A soldier near the doors looked up first, then another. By the time the Supreme Leader noticed the hall had gone quiet, it was no longer because of anything Sanaa had said. Near the doorway, the boy was looking up too, one hand pressed flat against a small, faded star sewn into the inside of his own collar. Hidden, passed down, and hidden again, 4 generations deep. And for the first time since she'd entered, so was every servant along the wall. 1 light year away, the Watch Squadron had been receiving everything Aster sent through the hidden relay since the crash. The capital's layout, every defense platform, every human camp on the continent, plus the gravity map and safe fold coordinates the ships had never had before. 86,412 human descendants, enslaved. General Vance commanded the operation from the Watch Squadron's flagship. The moment Sanaa said the others are already behind me, she gave the order Earth had waited generations to give. The larger recovery force waited at the last verified fold behind the Watch Squadron, close enough to deploy once the final corridor was confirmed, but never exposed to an untested route. The Watch Squadron entered the corridor Aster had mapped. Its ships verified the passage in real time, while Threshold transmitted the completed solution to the force behind them. Above the Ver capital, the sky folded open. The first white fractures belonged to the Watch Squadron. Destroyers, recovery craft, and hospital ships crossing the final light year in seconds. Their confirmation pulse traveled back through the route. A heartbeat later, the recovery force followed. 10 fractures became 100. Every weapon aboard them was already primed. "To the descendants of the United Earth ship Horizon," Vance's voice said, on every receiver on the planet. "Your signal has been received. You were never forgotten." The Ver fleet was disabled in 9 minutes. Earth ships folding directly through their formations, disarming rather than destroying. In the Great Hall, Aster dissolved Sanaa's restraints. During the interrogation, its nanites had reached the Ver's own central collar network, and turned that efficiency against them. Every slave collar in the capital unlocked at once. The old woman by the throne, Miriam, the others called her, moved first, pulling younger servants toward the doors as dropships screamed overhead. The liberation took 3 days, not because the Ver could still win, but because Earth refused to bombard cities full of civilians. Fabricators printed food and clean water, while soldiers fought street by street. Beneath the lowered command module of the Horizon, Miriam asked Sanaa one last question. "Are we going home?" Sanaa looked across the city 86,000 people had built out of generations of survival. "This is your home, if you choose it. Earth is yours, too." The rescue of the Horizon reopened every missing vessel file on the wall. One by one, carrier ships slipped to the edges of unmapped systems and released their pods into the dark. Some found survivors. Some found only wreckage and a name to bring home. None ended in uncertainty. The Pathfinders went on to map worlds no fleet could safely approach, and make first contact no conventional ambassador could survive alone. They carried almost nothing, which was exactly what allowed them to travel so far, reducing the first human risk from hundreds of lives to 1. Sanaa had proved that 1 human could enter the unknown. The missions after hers proved that no Pathfinder should ever be left without someone capable of coming behind them. In time, operators were organized into 3-person cells. 3 people, 3 pods, each able to travel alone, each responsible for bringing the other 2 home. The first watch squadrons became specialized reconnaissance ships. Improvised judgment became formal alert levels. Rescue plans became retrieval protocols. What began inside the United Earth Expeditionary Forces eventually became Earth Space Command's Pathfinder Division. Aster's transfer architecture became the foundation of every Pathfinder intelligence that followed. Later generations would exist across pods, armor, and entire cells at once. Aster had begun with only 2 bodies and 1 human voice to follow. Every academy that came after would put the same words above its door, taken from Sanaa's own reports. No one should be abandoned simply because saving them is difficult. The systems changed. The first rule never did. 1 human goes first. And if they call for help, humanity answers. You may be unreachable. You may be missing for generations. You may believe Earth has forgotten your name. But lost is not the same as abandoned. A Pathfinder is coming.